student chair of the Women's Initiative in Leadership, a group that serves to empower undergraduate women at Harvard through developing leadership skills.
The Institute of Politics is a living memorial to President John F. Kennedy, and its mission really is to inspire undergraduates here at Harvard College to pursue politics and public service. And so we are so grateful that you were able to join us here today for an event that we are very proud to have. The conversations like these are really the cornerstone of what we hope to do here at the Institute of Politics. We have over 600 undergraduate members and hundreds more students that engage with the IOP on a daily basis. And so we are so excited and thankful that you were able to join us for this very special conversation here today.
To kick things off today, I have the great honor of introducing Ambassador Caroline Kennedy. In October of 2013, she was confirmed by the U.S. Senate to be the United States Ambassador to Japan, and she served in this role until 2017. Ambassador Kennedy is also an attorney and the editor of 9 books on constitutional law, American history, politics, and poetry. A graduate of Harvard University and a former resident of my very own Courier House, in fact, as well as Columbia Law School, we at the IOP are very grateful for Ambassador Kennedy's continued support of the Institute of Politics and for her role as the honorary chair of the Senior Advisory Committee. Now, please join me in welcoming Ambassador Caroline Kennedy.
Everybody. It's my lucky day to be here on the same afternoon as one of the people I admire most in the world, Nancy Pelosi. Nancy fell in love with politics early. Her father was a legendary mayor of Baltimore, and she grew up watching what a difference politics can make in the lives of ordinary citizens. I think she would admit that as a young teenage girl in 1960, she fell in love with JFK too. I only say that because every time I visit her office, she shows me the picture of her wearing her prom dress when her dad took her to the Oval Office to meet him. Nancy understands what makes women enter politics: the health, safety, education, and environment our children are growing up in. She was already the mother of 5 when her political career began. She's done more for the children of this country than anyone, fighting hard for every dollar to benefit the most vulnerable and powerless among us. She's advanced the Democratic agenda with singular passion and commitment and results. It took 70 years, and like so many other pieces of landmark legislation, the Affordable Care Act would never have passed without her leadership and skill. It's no secret that the reason she's the #1 target of Republicans is because she is so effective. But the thing that makes her one of the greatest speakers of all time is that she uses her power to do what is right, not just to survive, but to make the world a better place, not just to be politically relevant. And that compliment comes via my cousin Joe, and it's from a Republican. To put it in terms this audience will understand, Nancy Pelosi is to the House what Ted Kennedy was to the Senate. As the first woman, mother, and grandmother to lead a major party and serve as speaker, not to mention the greatest vote getter, vote counter, legislative strategist, and fundraiser of her era, maybe she means even more. Her warmth, friendship, and generosity of spirit have touched my entire family. The IOP is honored to welcome her today to a conversation with our dynamite new director, former Peace Corps director, White House communications lead, college president, and Gardner, Mass. native, Mark Guerin. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Ambassador Kennedy. Welcome and greetings. This is a standing room only crowd. Peter Pelosi, we're thrilled to have you here. So many of our students and colleagues and friends of the IOP, on behalf of Dean Elmendorf, we welcome you warmly to the Kennedy School, to the Institute of Politics, and to have you here. So let's get in. There's microphones. We'll have a little conversation at first, and then we'll turn some questioning over to the audience. But 3 weeks from today. 21 days. We want you to use your predictive skills that Ambassador Kennedy mentioned, the ability to look at things and to project. Will the Red Sox be the World Champions?
You tell me. I think the spirit in this room would say yes. There's some steps to take along the way. But they always say of Boston, just as an aside, the 3 favorite pastimes are sports, politics, and revenge. So I don't know what part we're getting to now. But we started with sports, and that's a good place to be, a good playing field. Thank you, Mark, for the opportunity to share some conversation with you. We're also proud of Mark. He imagined in this Kennedy tradition being appointed to the director of the Peace Corps in the spirit of President Kennedy, something a dream he had and realized for the world. Thank you, Mark Aaron. Can you just imagine, I mean, it really is off-putting to be introduced by Ambassador Kennedy, but to do so in such a personal way. I don't think I have many honors in my life. This ranks right up there among the absolute best. Madam Ambassador, I wish that you could all seen. I saw her on a couple of occasions in Japan as ambassador. To see command, how she just commands so much respect from the officials there. But the beautiful part was from the Japanese people. They just loved her as our ambassador. Thank you for serving us with such dignity and honor. The connection, seeing all of you college-age students here, I was remembering that I was in college is when I heard President Kennedy make his inaugural address. And that was something quite remarkable, which when we talk about some issues perhaps I'll reference, but that was, all of us were so inspired by President Kennedy, and to see the legacy continue and flourish and just grow in such a way in all of your faces. It is just something just miraculous almost. Except if you ever saw him speak, see the excellence of his agenda, the success of his administration, most importantly though, the inspiration to the world. I'll just tell you this one thing from the inaugural, and then, because I can't resist. And it's a contrast. You'd be the judge. When I was there at that inauguration, I was there as a student at college in Washington, D.C. My father had been a member of Congress before he was mayor, but he had been a member of Congress. Members of Congress got these close-up seats, which I was sitting in one of. And President Kennedy, now everybody who studies American history, or certainly President Kennedy, knows that in the inaugural address he said to the citizens of America, ask not what you can do for America, but what America can do for you, but what you can do for America. Remember that. Everybody knows that. But what I remembered was the very next sentence. The very next sentence. To the citizens of the world, ask not what America can do for you, but what we can do working together for the freedom of mankind. How needed that inspiration is today. It's so inspiring about our unity as mankind, as people in the world, freedom being an aspiration, liberty being who we are, and working together. What we can do working together for the freedom of mankind. There isn't a day that goes by that you can't take a line from that speech and apply it to what we're doing. I'll just again brag. I always put the bragging sign up, but you can just imagine when they had the anniversary, 50th anniversary of President Kennedy's inaugural address, that I had the opportunity to speak as the Democratic leader of the House under the dome of the Capitol, as his words then echoed through the dome. I was there. I kept saying to my colleagues, I was there. Was anybody else here? I was there.
Well, thank you for that beautiful framing. Let's build that out to your own engagement in public service, which is well known certainly to this audience for your own commitment to public service. And you spoke of your father. You're at the Institute of Politics at the Kennedy School. Our mission at the Institute of Politics is to inspire Harvard students to active citizenship in public service. In this climate, in this time of divided politics and fractious politics, what would you say to our students in terms of your own public service, whether you see it with your colleagues, and any encouragement you give them for that perhaps career option?
Well, not necessarily from my own sample, but being in Boston, it's always, or Cambridge, or the area. The inspiration of our founders is something that is so significant to everyone who takes seriously public service in our country, certainly President Kennedy. And our founders, they were so brilliant, they were so courageous, and they gave us such guidance. Fortunately, they made our Constitution amendable so that it could expand freedom. They told us something that I think we should all remember. E pluribus unum, from many one. They couldn't possibly imagine how many we would become or how different we would be from each other. But they knew that we had to strive to be one. So as we get into the exuberance of our different points of view and the rest, we always remember that responsibility. What is unifying to our country? And sometimes our differences are so great it's hard to find that path. But we owe it to them to try to find that path, find our common ground where we can, stand our ground like a rock, as Jefferson said, where we can't, but always strive. And so we have a Constitution that is about separation of power, 3 co-equal branches of government that balance each other, that balance out each other, or supposed to, and that we, in the institution that we have, Article 1, the legislative branch, that's the first branch of government, that in our service in that branch, that we bring honor to it and that we strengthen it. So again, as we get, as I say, exuberant about one thing or another, we have to remember to keep pulling it back to honoring the institution we serve, of course honoring the vows of our founders, but strengthening the institution we serve, recognizing our checks and balances role, but also for example, 3 weeks from now, whether it's the Red Sox, good luck to you on that. I was here for Red Sox World Series victory a few years ago. It was wonderful.
You're invited.
For the Red Sox. But when we had the election that day, and assuming for a moment, but taking nothing for granted, that we were to win, our responsibility would be to take us to a better place. A Congress that is open and transparent so people know what is happening there. One that is accountable to the public directly, which is unifying, and what we strive to do, even bipartisan, to strive for that. Again, common ground, stand like a rock when you can't, but also remembering that I don't think any of you would ever engage in public service and go to Washington or wherever to say, I'm here to divide. Right? You wouldn't even think that. But there is some thinking out there like that we have to dispel by example, by honoring the vows of our founders, which is our responsibility, God bless you, but by honoring also the sacrifice of our men and women in uniform and their families for how they keep us, the land of the brave and the land of the free, and then the aspirations of our children So we have enormous responsibilities when you step into the public arena. And I hope that many of you will, from here at the Institute of Politics. Excuse me, I think it's, every time I'm in a new rug, I kind of get the sniffle. Is this a new rug? It's new to me.
We had a good couple here. So let's
Let me just acknowledge Dean Elmendorf as well. He's so wonderful, and we miss him so at the Capitol. Where are you going? Oh, is he still with us? When in the event. Thank you so much for your leadership as well.
we have, let's get into some of the politics as you've been alluding to that. So 3 weeks from today. You're traveling the country, meeting with candidates, supporting them.
Right.
Are you seeing a wave? The Institute of Politics will be hosting the newly elected members of Congress, bipartisan
Yes, we
group,
will. That's wonderful.
which we're looking forward to that in December. How do you see the politics? Would you be in a different chair come?
Are you talking about how the election's going to turn out?
That would
We're talking World Series again.
Let's go to the Institute of Politics.
Okay, here's the thing, and I'll try to be brief. The people ask me all over the country, is it a wave or is it a tsunami? And I said, well, in either case, it's little drops of water. And there are many of them. How many a wave? How many more a tsunami? But they're all close. They're all very, very close. These are many close races. I think if the election were today, we would win the majority. I don't know how much water would be involved, but I know we would win the majority. Wave or tsunami, we'll see in 3 weeks. I would much rather, from the standpoint of handicapping, if anybody's handicapping out there, rather be Democrats than Republicans today. We're in a much better place. Voting is beginning. And so we have fabulous candidates on the field. And I say this to you in the hopes that you will be candidates yourselves. Dustin, Olivia, Jackson spoke, and one of my interns from my office, and Madeline. If you decide to step onto that field, into that arena that Teddy Roosevelt talked about, that John Kennedy, President Kennedy thrived in, if you decide to go into that arena, I want you to be like some of our candidates are today. They know their why. They know why they're doing it. They know what their vision is about America. They know their subject matter, whatever it is that drew them in. Mine was about children, benefit of children, but what drew them in, whether it's climate, whether it's LGBTQ fairness issues, whether it's women's right to choose, whether it's gun violence prevention, whether it's immigration, whatever a subject might be that attracted them. Know your why, know your what, know your how you can get something done. And if you talk to constituents, which is the most important thing to do, listen to constituents. But then you learn how you can represent them, and they learn how they can authentically believe you. And these candidates are authentic. They know who they are, why they are running, what they're talking about, and how they connect. And that's really important because representative is your job description and your job title. So you want that to be the same. But just say you're running for another position or whatever it is. Just know your why. Be prepared. And so these candidates they're fabulous. They're fabulous candidates on the field. Men and women, people of color, LGBTQ, with the beautiful diversity of America. That's the candidates. The platform they stand on is our mobilization. I've never seen anything like it, the mobilization that is out there, the grassroots mobilization. So for the next 3 weeks, and even starting a little before, we fully intend to own the ground. Just own the ground. Our VIPs in all of this are our volunteers in politics. They're knocking on doors, making calls. Every door they knock, every call they make, every sign they plant, every postcard they send, every contact they make can make the difference. These are little drops of water. So we have the candidates, the mobilization, the message, who are we for? We're for the people. For the people to have lower health care costs by reducing the cost of prescription drugs. For the people to have bigger paychecks by building the infrastructure of America. And for the people by having campaign finance reform to make government work for them. And that is our message agenda, message mobilization. And we have the financial resources, the money to get the job done. They'll have endless. We just have to have enough. But owning the ground, well, we have the people power, so owning the ground, absolutely essential to it. Now, some of you that I've spoken to, and others that, last night I was at NYU in New York, people come up and say, oh, this and oh, that. And I said, listen, we don't agonize, we organize. And that's just the way it is. So don't worry about what's happening to other people. Just worry about what we have to offer and how organized we are to get it done. And so I think that today we would win. In 3 weeks, I believe that we will win. I don't know wave 23, which is the number we need, wave or tsunami, but I would much rather, as I say, be in our position with all the mobilization that is going on out there. How do you see it?
No, I think we'll get to it, I'm sure, in some of the questions as well. I think there's a lot of energy. We're in the field with an Institute of Politics poll of our 18 to 29-year-old voters. So we'll have a real sense of that in the next couple of weeks with the Institute of Politics poll.
Wonderful.
A lot of student interest, certainly. But let me turn then to the agenda. Assuming there is that success that you would have for the Democratic Party, what is the agenda for the Democrats? How do you see the first 100 days of the new Congress?
Well, first we have to win. And when we do, understand this, we build our agenda by consensus. So while we have some idea of it from the members who are there, we're welcoming the members who are coming in and what revitalization they will give to the agenda. And one thing I'm hearing from all of them, which is music to my ears, is that they really do want the campaign finance thing to be H.R. 1, the first resolution of the new Congress, to be campaign finance reform. That's, I think, 100 of them now. That's even more candidates than on our red to blue, but at least I think 100 of them have signed that petition, which is a great thing. But our first act will be our rule, led by a person from Massachusetts, Jim McGovern, who will be the chair of the Rules Committee. And he will put forth a rule of, like I said earlier, openness and accountability and bipartisanship and unity, bringing us together. That will be a big difference as to how the House is run now, and be similar to how we did before. But Jim McGovern will take the lead on that, and he's listening and communicating with members and candidates now about how far they want to go and all of that. But it's going to be a completely new, open day. Because once the public sees the debate, instead, if I just may, a tax bill that has $7 trillion impact on our economy, sleight of hand, dark of night, speed of light, with no hearings or anything else, that's just not any way. Ronald Reagan and Tip O'Neill took almost over a year to do a bipartisan tax bill. And when we do our tax bill, another Massachusetts person, Richie Neal, will be the chairman of the Ways and Means Committee. I don't know whether we're going to win the election, but I know Richie Neal's going to be the chair of the committee, and Jim McGovern's going to be the chair of the Rules Committee.
Well,
just somehow I see that. You know, I can see that.
you certainly have a perfect
And so
leader.
our agenda following that will be lowering the cost of health care, raising the paycheck, just as I said, by building the infrastructure of America. and building it a new green way so that we're taking our planet into the future and not degrading it, but improving it for future generations. And that climate piece will be a very important part. The third, as I said, the first piece was the campaign finance reform. There are two things we asked the Republicans to do, beg them to do, petition them to do, sat in to ask them to do, that they didn't do, that we'll do early as well. And one is to protect the dreamers, because that is a responsibility and a promise that was made. We'd like to do comprehensive immigration reform, but first and foremost, we know we can get bipartisan support to protect the dreamers. And the second would be common sense background checks on to prevent gun violence, and that is an absolute must that we have to do. So those 5 things would be in the early top 10.
Okay. So I just have one more question. And
one more thing, what we said. There's one more thing. It isn't in our agenda because it doesn't get that specific. But there's one that's personal for me that I really want to do, and it's called the Equality Act. And the Equality Act expands ending discrimination against LGBTQ people and women, and adding that to the civil rights movement.
That's ambitious agenda. I just have one question, then we'll kick it to our students to the microphones. But assuming that you're in the majority, assuming that is with your legislative agenda, and if President Trump pivots and says, yes, I am engaging now with the new Democratic leadership, can you trust those conversations? Can you trust them?
Promise you won't tell anybody, I'm saying.
We're just among friends.
It's an interesting dynamic when you have a gavel. It just makes all the difference in the world and the leverage you have in your conversation. And so I think that the fact that we would have the majority would make a difference in whether we can depend on what he has to say. But we have to always try. We have to always try. He has said, I think one place where we can find common ground is infrastructure. How green he wants to be, I don't know, but that's our side of it. The infrastructure to build from sea to shining sea, the infrastructure of America, not just surface transportation, but high-speed rail, mass transit, water systems, schools, housing, broadband, always on, high-speed broadband to facilitate the net neutrality that we continue to fight for in all of this. That piece of it, I think we can find common ground with them.
Okay, so we have a microphone here. I invite folks to go to the microphone to identify yourself. And as is our tradition here, we invite your questions to end with a question mark.
You mean no speeches disguised as questions?
Right, and so we'd like to go through as many as we can when we start.
Okay, so I'll try to answer briefly. Do you want to ask 3 questions at a time?
Yeah, why don't we kind of cluster them? Very nice.
Hi, thank you for coming. I'm Zachary. I'm from New Jersey. I'm a freshman here at Harvard College. It's been reported that you would support a raising of the minimum wage to $15 nationally and phasing that in over time slightly. But how would you sell that to rural voters when a lot of economists estimate that will have some even say a catastrophic impact on rural economies? How would you sell that?
Well, let's take 3.
Okay, why don't we build around here?
Hi, thank you for being here. My name is Corey DeHare. I'm a Master of Public Policy student from New Zealand. I'm very excited to hear you talk about campaign finance reform, and I just wondered what are your personal preferences on the contours of a campaign finance reform bill? Not what it will be, but what do you personally think is needed, and what would you push for?
And we'll take one more.
Hi, I'm Kate. I'm a freshman at the college and I'm from Massachusetts. You spoke very extensively about the importance of forbearance on the democratic process and kind of returning to the rules that were broken by the Republicans in recent years.
but you're also talking about incredibly ambitious policy goals. So if the Republicans continue to try to obstruct your policies, especially the ones that would immediately affect the daily lives of people, how much do you hope to continue to use that forbearance and play by the rules, and how much do you hope to kind of expedite the process in order to help the most amount of people?
Thank you. Well, why don't I start with the last one? The way we would anticipate, and this applies to almost anything in life, the words of Abraham Lincoln. He said, public sentiment is everything. With it, you can accomplish almost anything. Without it, practically nothing. And what we're saying on all of those fronts is we have to take the conversation to the public. And that's why the openness and transparency of this new Congress would be so important, because people would see what difference it makes in their lives. And that's very, very important, because inside maneuvering can just accomplish so much. Outside mobilizations, that's the success of our democracy. That's how, with 10,000 events that the outside groups had to protect the Affordable Care Act, we were able to protect the Affordable Care Act. It's still standing, much to their surprise and dismay. So that really, that's what gives me hope, is people are watching, people can see if you have a transparent government. And we think that more than anything, people telling their stories, 10,000 events, little lobbyists, little children, people with disabilities, people with one pre-existing condition or another. And that's one of the big fights we have, because they want to remove the pre-existing condition benefit. We just cannot let that happen. But our strongest voices are the people's voices. Thank you. In terms of the bill, we have a bill. If you go to the website, you'll see a better deal for democracy. And it has several components about rewarding small donors and making it a consideration for either matching funds or something. It's stopping the revolving door into Congress of people, lobbyists and others coming in, working their will, going out, making more money. It's about those kinds of things. It's very thought out for a long period of time, and it's something that some of the outside groups like End Citizens United, they are working with a lot of the new members on the provisions of what the bill is. But some start, again, people always weigh in, and that's a good thing. But that's what the start is. John Sarbanes of Maryland, who, I think Princeton, but anyway. That's where his father went. Anyway. That's where I would look for the bill. It's right there. And it's been worked on with the outside good government groups for a long time. And now the new class will weigh in on it. In terms of the $15 minimum wage, I support the fight for 15 so that we could get to that place. One of the challenges that we have in our country is that people are underpaid. That's just the way it is. I passed as speaker one of the first bills I did in the first 100 hours of my speakership was to pass, sad to say, the just over $7 minimum wage. We thought it was a big deal. It was the first time we passed the minimum wage in 11 years. And when we went to kind of celebrate outside, who was standing on the podium with us was the leader of the bill in the Senate, Ted Kennedy. And you know what he said? He turned around to me and he said, and we just passed it. George Bush is president. We have a Republican president who will sign it. He turned around to me and said, you know what we have to do now, Nancy? I said, what's that? He said, we have to pass the minimum wage. I said, well, we just did. He said, no, we have to do it more. So he was already on to the next bill. And that was in 2007. So that's 11 years ago since we raised the minimum wage. And I hear what you're saying about different localities, different professions, restaurants, whatever it is. I do hear some of their concerns. But I do think that the purchasing power of people making a higher wage respects the dignity of their work, but also injects demand into the economy as they spend the money. And that's the calibration that we will have to make. These localities will gain consumer consumption if the people that are working for them are making a higher wage. But I hear your question. I appreciate it. Thank you.
All right, we'll take a few more. We'll start right here.
Hi, my name is Jeremy. I'm a master's public policy student here at Kennedy School. Thank you for being here. In your last election for leadership, you were challenged by Representative Tim Ryan, and who received a third of the vote. And we've seen some people running on a platform of not voting for you in leadership. My question is a little bit broad. In regards to leadership, how does one deal with this negative public sentiment and organizing your coalition and bringing them back under your leadership and support for you?
Well, that's what a leader has to do. I don't think, maybe when I ran for speaker the first time I wasn't opposed, but I've always been opposed. Leading up to that and since then. People have, it's a Democratic Party. It's what you expect. It's the vitality of our party. So none of that it frightens me. It's what I anticipate, what I expect, and what I thrive on. And I have said to my colleagues, my friends out there, do whatever you have to do. Just win, baby. I just want them to win the election, and that's what it's for me. But I feel that, look, there's only one thing that matters to me right now. With so much at stake, with people taking babies out of the arms of their parents at the border, denying dreamers the dignity that most of the country affords to them, with all the challenges that we face with dumping stuff into degrading the air, the water, the rest of it, with so many concerns that, well, we don't agonize, we organize. Isn't that what I said? The really important part of that of all is who's going to be the leader of the Democratic Party. And none of us is indispensable. But you have to have, I'm saying this to largely the women, but others welcome to listen. You can't let the opposite party choose your leaders in your party. If they want to take out these big ads and then put candidates on the spot, I just say to the candidates, do what you have to do, just win, baby. But you can't. But I refuse to allow the Republicans, in doing that, to choose who our leaders are. And I say this especially to the women because they think women are going to run away from a fight. I think, but you can't do that. You can't do that. You believe in what you have to offer. Know your power. Know your why. Know your what. Know your how. Connect with your voters and people are supporters of those you wish to convince. But don't let them think you're running away from the fight. So it's the vitality of it all, and actually it's the strengthening of it all. So I feel pretty good about it. I know that was asked in good faith, and I hope you accepted my answer in good faith. Yes, sir.
My name is Graham. I'm a senior at the college. Thank you so much for coming to speak to us. Young people, millennials, are overwhelmingly left-leaning, but a lot of people in my generation don't see young leaders coming up that speak to them on issues that matter to them. Does Washington's priority on seniority prevent young, new ideas from getting the microphone and rising leaders who would really bring out a youth base to vote Democratic?
Great. Great.
Thank you for your question. And would you want to do questions first?
Whatever your preference.
173 left stands.
Yeah.
So why don't I say, we have something called our 30-somethings. It's a group of House members, and we're going to have some 20-somethings pretty soon. Women, 27 women, coming into the Congress. And it is a group that goes around the country. They've been to probably 70 venues now. I'm surprised they may not have been here. Maybe they were here before you were here. And listening to millennials, not talking to millennials, or not saying the Democrats are here, come to the demo hall. Listening to millennials and coming back and telling the Congress what they're hearing, whether it's about the cost of education, whether it's about the climate issue, whether it's about net neutrality, whether it's about bigger issues, broader issues the economy or more narrow issues, for example, like a net neutrality, which affects the economy. And that is very much a part of how we build our consensus. They're all in their 30s, we'll have some in their 20s. You have to be 30 to come to Congress. You have to be 25, so you have to reach a certain age to get there. In our caucus, the person who heads that up is called, his name is Eric Swalwell. He's from California. He's 30-something. Part of that group is Joe Kennedy. He's a 30-something, and he's part of that group as well. But there's a large number of them, and it's up to them to decide if they want to run for leadership. The second part of your question, the seniority. Now, myself, I'm not a big fan of the seniority system in terms of, but it's there. And there are certain groups, certain minority groups who think that it should stay there because then people think it took a long time for minorities to get to the top of committees, for a long time for a woman to be the Speaker of the House. They're saying, well, wait a minute, as soon as we're getting to the top, you're changing the rules. And it's a debate. That's not right or it's not wrong. It's just a debate. But I'll tell you this, and when I started to run some years ago, you know what they said? Who said she could run? Because there had never been, this was not a glass ceiling, this was a marble ceiling to break. Who said she could run? They said, well, she has many friends who are advising her to run, and many of them are women. And they said, well, why don't you just tell the women to write some, what do they want? Put it on a piece of paper and we'll take care of it. I don't think so. So it is, nobody makes a path for people, although I have been exemplary, especially immodestly, about putting people into positions, made Eric Swalwell a part of the leadership right away. 2 years ago, to be part of the chairman of the steering, co-chair of the steering policy committee, which is a very big deal. But people have to run. That's just, that's what it is. But I see it, I myself see a preparation for the future. I see myself as a bridge, really. One thing to do is to make sure people know how to do it. To be a legislator. I'm a master legislator. I love it. I really do love it. And you have to know how to do it. And you have to get experience. And so that's why I want so many more young women to come, because the men come young. They don't take care of the baby. I mean, some are, God bless them. But the women have been coming older. In my case, I came in my 40s. I want women to come in their 30s or late 20s, whatever it is, when they can come. But the sooner you're there, the more quickly you gain seniority. And that is what gives you power there. But I want to make sure they have the experience, and not make sure, just give them the opportunity for the experience. And I've done that. People will tell you, I've given so much opportunity to people, and younger people. B, I want to make sure that how the fundraising is done is small donor. We built a massive background of small. The people that we raise money for in the Democratic Party are very idealistic. They're progressives who want good government. This is not a pragmatic agenda. However, still, it's nice to have as many small donors, and you have to have a system for it. And you have to give them reason to give. It's not just it's the 30th of the month, so somebody's going to send a check. It's we're fighting for what this is. So, and also to have a mobilization out there that respects what we're doing in Congress, but we respect what they're doing. After the march, the women's marches, and the children's march, the young people's march for our lives, people said, how are you going to use that energy? I said, we're not going to use that energy. They're going to use us. They're going to tell us how they want to be used. So it's changing with technology, how you can raise money, how you can mobilize people, how you can inform people about legislation so they know what is going on. It's a whole tipping point, watershed, turning point, name it anything you want. It's going to be different. So.
And a quick follow-up, you said you're a bridge within the party, bridge How are you referencing bridge?
Interpretation is not, in terms of how we take what we're doing into the future, whether it's in the party or outside the party.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Kate Cavell, and I'm a staff member here and a doctoral student at Boston College. And thank you for being here. So I'm concerned with how few women compared to men run for elected office statewide and nationwide. And we know that it's not, if women and men run in the same race, women are equally likely to win. It's just that they're not running in the first place. So my doctoral research backs up to find out what we can do at the campus level to make women feel ready or qualified to run. So I'm wondering if there are things about your time on campus or early in your career that made you feel qualified and ready to run.
Thank you, Kate. Let me just say that we're very proud of the fact that we have 83 what we call red to blue. That means these are our prospects from which we hope to win 23. More than that, but must win 23. And 44 of them are women. And the women are out there confident and ready. You have to be ready. As I said before, know your stuff. Ready, prepared to be members of Congress, as you'll see when they come up here soon. So from our standpoint, we had made a decision in the House. When I went to that House, there were 23 women, 12 Democrats, 11 Republicans. Out of 435 people. I said, this is ridiculous. We all got together and made a decision. We're up to 65. A third of the House Democrats are women. You know, they talk about 20% of the Congress. A third of the House Democrats are women. Half of the House Democrats are women, minorities, women, people of color, and LGBTQ, over half of our delegation. And that will continue as our numbers grow, so will the participation of that beautiful diversity. But we had to make a decision to do it, to go from 12 to 65, where the Republicans went from, I think, 11 to 21. I'm not talking about them here, but I'm just saying we made the decision to go there. So back to what I said earlier, combining some of what I said earlier, I know this for a fact. You may have interpreted some things that I've said as opinion here. I know this as a fact. If you reduce the role of money in politics and increase the level of civility in politics, you will increase the number of women in government and in politics. And not only that, young people, people of color, LGBT, and the rest, the gate will be open. And that is what we intend to do with our rule of civility and with our HR 1 with lowering that. And then I would just say to women, just be confident. My friends are laughing, sometimes amused. They say, I've never seen you brag about being a master legislator and a dazzling fundraiser talking about myself. But I'm just trying to be an example to women to say, do not let anybody trivialize your accomplishments. And I'm trying to say to young women, be yourself. That's the most important advice you can give. Be your authentic self. But self-promotion is a terrible thing, but sometimes somebody has to do it. Somebody's not going to do it for you. You just have to assert. And I assure you, if you show your vision, your knowledge, your plan, you will attract support. You will attract support.
Well, let's just collapse all these remaining questions.
Hi, my name is Alec. I am a sophomore at college. I want to thank you for being here. And thank you for everything that you've done for the country. They really admire you. My question has to do with accountability, particularly of this administration. We've seen a lot of attacks on the special counsel investigation over the last couple of months. And how will the Democratic Congress, assuming that we take control of the House, ensure that the president's kept accountable, ensure the institutions that this country needs are kept stable and basically not allowed to be desecrated?
And we'll just combine the last one if we could.
Excuse me, I'm Sebastian, I'm a freshman here at the college. I want to preface it by saying that I'm a Democrat, but I have a lot of family in rural Pennsylvania who are Republicans and for whom the wall is very important and continues to be. And they see it as appeasement. Their way of life is declining, and in return they want a wall. mean, it's more complicated than that. But I wonder if Democrats aren't being too precious about building the wall. I've heard estimates that range in terms of the pricing, but probably it's a rounding error in the discretionary budget. I know it's repugnant, we don't like the symbolism, but I'm wondering what you'd be willing to trade. It's a very ambitious agenda, and I'm wondering what you'd be willing to trade if you gave Trump the wall.
Nothing. Let me just say this, I want to enlarge the issue from the wall to immigration, because that's what the question is about. And somehow or other, we have to address the financial insecurity of America's families. That's why we're saying the health issue is a health issue and a financial health issue, as well as rewarding work with a decent pay. It's about addressing that financial insecurity. But we want more than even the minimum wage for those people. But the president has sold them a bill of goods that they lost their job because of trade, and maybe some did, and they lost their job because of immigrants. Probably not many. Some, but maybe not many. And I bet you probably wouldn't guess who the president is that I quote on the campaign trail the most, except for President Kennedy, my inspiration. Ronald Reagan. And why? Ronald Reagan said this: "This is the last speech I will make as President of the United States. And I have a message I want to communicate to the country I love." He goes on, I'm not quoting verbatim, he goes on to talk about the Statue of Liberty and what that means to people who see it approaching our country or just see pictures of it about our country. This beacon of hope, welcoming people to the American dream. Or how people think in our country that we look back at it and see my parent, my grandparent, my ancestor came back past that statue for the American dream. Then he goes on to say, "The vital force of America's preeminence in the world is every generation of new immigrants who come to America. And when we fail to recognize that, America will fail to be preeminent in the world." Ronald Reagan is even better than that because it's longer and talks about what immigrants bring to our country. So while we have to certainly guard our borders, that's our responsibility, and while we have to have comprehensive immigration reform, which passed in a bipartisan way in the United States Senate, but that the Republicans in the House refused to take up, that's the place that we have to go. We have to do something other than building a wall, which you characterize very well. In my view, it's immoral, expensive, ineffective, and not something that people do between countries. But in any event, it happens to be like a manhood issue for the president. And I'm not interested in that. But I will say that we can't allow him to say we're not interested in protecting the border. That isn't the only way to protect the border. In fact, it's probably the worst way to protect the border. But I was just in Pennsylvania for 2 days, Friday and Saturday. I was in Bucks County. I was in Chester County, Delaware County, Bucks County. There was a number of some of the suburban areas, or rural, in the more rural areas. And I hear what you're saying. And it's as I say, what we want to do is make people financially secure, not keep them financially insecure and build a wall and say, no, everything's okay. We really have to get to the heart of the problem. We expect to win a minimum of 4 seats in Pennsylvania. Maybe 5, maybe 6. We'll see. But a minimum of 4 seats in Pennsylvania. And I know I have a Republican in my family, perhaps voted for Trump. We don't ask, he doesn't tell. Anyway, I appreciate your question and the shall we say, understanding you have of the issue. Thank you. And what was yours again, Timothy?
Basically, just what a Democrat.
What were the
Yes.
yeah. the issue to remind was what are we going to do in terms of oversight and preserving the Mueller Amendment, investigation and the rest of that. It's something that I think we have to handle with great care. We don't want him interfering with the Mueller agreement. We don't want to interfere with it either. We shouldn't and we won't. But we do have to have one thing that we should all agree on, the truth for the American people. And where the truth leads us is another thing. So in terms of that, we need to know what the Russians did to disrupt our elections. We know from all of the intelligence agencies' consensus, high confidence consensus, that they disrupted our election. We cannot let that happen. So we have to know the truth. So one thing that we would do about the Mueller investigation is to make sure that the documentation is preserved. He may come to whatever conclusion he comes to. This is a long conversation, I'm moving on. He may come to a different conclusion about indictment of somebody or other. But that's a different standard for what could happen in the Congress. I think an impeachment, to use that word, is very divisive. That isn't a path that I would like to go down. But from getting the documents and the truth and where they lead us, that's what we have to do. In terms of the agencies of government, they have absolutely no oversight. They're spewing forth mercury, degrading the air, the water, the environment to an awful extent. They talk about taking away regulations when they're taking away protections. They don't believe in governance. So they don't want government to do anything. And they don't believe in science, so they don't see any justification to do it. And that's what we're dealing with. And there's nothing that Trump is about, President Trump, I'm trying to be respectful, President Trump is about that they haven't been about longer and worse. So don't wait for them to walk away from Trump because he's too extreme on one subject. That's who they are. And he's their guy. And so, but what we do have to do, so I think this shouldn't be scattershot. This should be responsible, honoring our Constitution and our responsibilities, seeking the truth, and in terms of the agencies of government, having the proper oversight to make sure that we are exercising our balance of power. So you will see, I've asked my committee chairs to be prepared, but not everything is on a par with everything else. This is not scattershot. It is what our responsibilities insist that we do. Just one thing, if you don't tell anybody, I'll tell you, is I did ask for a FOIA, a Freedom of Information Act request to the FBI about the investigation of Kavanaugh and what instruction investigators may have received from the president or from the Republicans in Congress, because I think the public should see what that investigation demonstrated. I remind you, maybe not to remind, because I didn't know myself until I just heard it recently, is that in September of 2016, the FBI released the documents of the investigation of Hillary Clinton. This is an earlier one. September 2nd, 2016, they released the documents of an investigation that they had with her and the communications connected with it. And the FBI said that they released it because it was a matter of public interest. The public wanted to know. And there was a FOIA request for it. So I've made a FOIA request for that. It takes 20 days. We'll see what they come up with. But why should there be an investigation of some limited value or whatever it is? Maybe it isn't limited, let us see, that is only available to those 100 people and a few staff, one at a time. I mean, really? So that's why I say transparency. transparency. That's what we should be about, for better or worse, but for truth, and that's better.